Why did you not optimize this game for PC?
We did. It's running great. It is a next-gen PC game. We really do push the technology, so you may need to upgrade your PC for this game.
Starfield is one of those games that I knew wouldn't be a 9 out of 10. I also knew that it wasn't going to be a game that would be an 8 out of 10. I was suspecting a 6 or 7. So when I clocked in about 100 hours or so into the game, I was laying in my bed feeling satisfied in some regards, but not in others. Wondering how much willpower I have to actually finish the main story due to burning myself out trying to do all the side quest content first. However, the side quests in this game for the factions has been some of the best quest lines I've ever played in a Bethesda title. They were so good, in fact, that here I am doing a review on this game. As when I was a kid, I was only able to play a few titles, those being Fallout 3, to a tiny bit of New Vegas, to Skyrim, and to Fallout 4. My favorite part of these games are the side quests you find off the beaten path.
For some reason though, in Bethesda titles, it seems that the writers only have control to experiment more and more when it comes to side quests. Or they may have more control to that story because there are less writers working on that story. Hence you get way more interesting stories like the Living Tree in Fallout 3, the ghouls trying to find another place to live in New Vegas, or Talking Dog in Skyrim. I'm happy to say though that only one faction quest line felt kind of lackluster for me to play specifically. And even then, visually, some of the coolest places I've seen in the game were through that quest line. The rewards you would get for completing each faction quest line were really good too. So even if there are lulls in the faction quest line, it always feels rewarding when you finish one. There are also more quest lines that are progressing in tandem while you try to finish these faction quest lines. 4, you are leveling up the affinity with the companions that are following you. Another huge strength this game has. The writing for these companions is the best I've seen in a Bethesda game when it comes to maintaining the quality in their own stories. The previous Bethesda games I played, there were only 1 or 2 characters where I actually cared for their stories and where they were going to. Yet in Starfield, I loved every single companion's quest line in this game, and it made me want to play the game more and more every time I would finish one of these quest lines. They felt original, interesting, and would bring in new characters and new locations, which would all make their quest lines feel unique, interesting, and distinguishable between the others. When it came to friendship and romance, it felt like the entire Bethesda system had been upgraded in this area. The player now has more intricate quest lines for the followers of Constellation, and being someone's friend or ally takes more than just doing karmic, bad, or good things. There's also a unique quest for a commitment or ritual of marriage with all these companions, which makes them feel even more unique and more special when you try to compare all of them together. However, I think there is a main reason and why I feel like this new universe and these new stories are just so good, and that has to do with just all the new lore in it. Lore is not half-assed when it was created in this game. When you were going through all of these faction quest lines and all the main story and some curbside side stories that you're going to find off the beaten path, you start to get pieces to a puzzle you did not expect to have in the first place. That leads to bigger meanings behind the choices that you make later in the game. Also, all the lore that is mentioned in the game has key locations where you actually go to discover them in the game, and those locations usually hold a piece of the importance in the story of a faction quest. And those locations usually hold a piece of importance in the story of a faction quest, the main story, or both. Every Bethesda game till now has more lore that always goes outside the world and the scope of the game that you're in. When you're playing Starfield, you actually go to these key historic moments in the lore that you hear. You then usually do a really cool mission with potentially new items and new enemies all together with it, which then gave me another second sale boost, as a lot of these quest lines with these lore were related with the faction quest lines I was talking about. It seems that the faction quest lines always materialized the lore and then kept expanding on it in more ways that would make me want to keep playing the game and prevent me from burning out. But now that I'm talking about burning out, let me give you the reasons why that started to happen.
So when people say that the game doesn't get good until 12 hours of playing or 36 hours or 100 hours, as rumors just have to escalate to that point every single time, that's just how the internet goes. I have a different opinion on why people are feeling that it takes 12 hours. And that is cheesecake that I've created, as you can see, that I've cut into 3 partitions. The first partition is tutorials. What do you mean by tutorials? Well, that's exactly the point. The lack of tutorials is the problem. So many systems in Starfield that are critical for you to have a good time are locked. And by that lack of knowledge you have, because it is not told to you when you're introduced to these new systems, Vasco, one of the first companions you meet, tells you to put down an outpost beacon, very similar to the Fallout 4 settlements. Yet for me, I skipped that promptly, thinking that if I talk to Vasco again, I'll be able to start that mission or that tutorial. But that did not happen. That is not the case. So when I did start a new outpost, I get some text boxes of dialogue to show me some of the basic certain things, but because I don't know anything going in realistically besides that you need power to start up your extractors, you need to take your extractors and output them to containers, it took me way too long to figure out and remember where crew stations were, because I'm pretty sure it was introduced to me like 15 or 30 hours before I restarted the outpost deep dive I was doing to try to check out the system that's in this game. So it took a very long time to go to miscellaneous and then fry the crew station not knowing what it does and create one, and then at the same time do that over and over and over again for a lot of the other functional things you have to build in this game to even get a tutorial on what it does. So the game becomes a unfun scavenger hunt on how to do things in the outpost in general. This was extremely disappointing to me because the previous game of Fallout 4, we did get a quest line with a tutorial for pretty much every aspect of the game. Yet now you could say, well, could you just take the information that you got from Fallout 4 and add it to your own brain for Starfield? And I would say yes, and mostly no. For most of the systems in Starfield's outpost management are not similar to Fallout 4's. Fallout 4 is a game that has no cargo link. You don't have Helium-3 to go to different systems with said cargo links. You don't have perks that are needed to build outposts in extreme environments. You don't need specific perks to do botany and animal husbandry. You don't. What I'm trying to get at is that there is too many brand new systems in Starfield's outpost management and creation that it requires a tutorial quest line to pair with it for it to be something players actually want to try. As I love base building in video games, there's several videos on my channel of me doing like highly edited let's plays of certain survival games, which I love. So it's not just the fact that I don't like the aspect of the game and that's why I didn't do it until way later into my playthrough of Starfield. It's because it wasn't implemented in the game correctly as a whole. Speaking on reasons on why it wasn't implemented correctly, there is another second partition of this cheesecake I want to talk about, and that is leveling up. In Starfield, you pick a background trait, and this background trait basically gives you 3 free perks that you don't have to level up and acquire skill points to actually unlock. You then have an option to pick 3 optional traits. The ones I had picked were having space parents, being highly wanted, and taskmaster, where your crew, if they are specialized in a certain system, when that ship's system gets below 50%, they will actually repair that system to 100% without you doing anything. But the con is that you have to pay your crew members twice as much as you usually do in the base game. The ones that I picked felt rewarding. Having the Space Parents Wanted and Taskmaster together made a pretty good synergy, getting something more out of this experience versus not having the traits. And even towards mid-game and end-game, all of these perks made the game more enjoyable. Even towards end-game and New Game Plus, the perks perks were still giving me extra pieces of content that I wouldn't have, and extra pieces of flavor text I wouldn't have if I just had played this without any of the traits. When it comes to the background trait, I picked one that was a diplomat. So you would have flavor text being a diplomat. Also, diplomat would help me a lot more when it comes to certain quest lines where the flavor text would also be charisma checks that are above charisma checks. They're just a guaranteed success, which I thought was cool. And that came with having the charisma perk unlocked, the commerce perk unlocked, which is selling and buying things for cheaper and getting more money. And then on top of that, the last one was wellness, which didn't really make that much sense to me, but basically gave me a 20% health increase and was the first rank in that tree. So I had to put less but still more points into these because I had committed to these perk trees and these perk rankings. And also I wanted to put them into lockpicking, which I feel is like a necessity to have. For lockpicking, to me, is a perk that is fundamental for making all the combat engagements and exploration in the game feel more rewarding. So when you have all these perks that you're going to have to allocate points into, being able to experiment is just not a thing. Realistically, it's just not there. And the reason is that it's not there because you only get one skill point per level up. And there are too many perks, I think, that are a necessity to have more fun in the game, that this system makes it feel like it doesn't value your time, which I do not appreciate when it comes to a video game. However, what do I mean by like fun? Well, there are a lot of mechanics in this game that are locked away, and I think they shouldn't be. For example, piloting is needed to be unlocked to use your ship's thrusters. Now, what do your thrusters do for you in space combat? They basically make it so that you hit spacebar and can do like a 180 while your inertia pushes you forward, so you can still shoot the enemy behind you. Versus having to wait a brutal amount of time doing a loop-to-loop where a space pirate destroys your shields and your hull, resulting in you dying. This is a huge issue when you're in higher difficulties where spaceship combat is way more brutal if you do not have the systems in place to give you an actual full space combat experience. Starfield doesn't just do that though with space combat, they do it for other things, such as the ability to crouch slide, fully have a stealth meter, and the ability to use your jetpack. Keep in mind that all of these first points you have to put in these perks are realistically one entire level, which can take hours to achieve. On top of that, you have to do challenges to unlock the next perk, and while this would be fine if you're taking a percentage of the total kills or activities that you're doing instead, and then project that to the challenges progress bar and make your future level up challenges complete faster than if you're starting from scratch, Starfield does not do that. So you have to grind and kill 100 more enemies first, or jump in a jetpack 50 more times in combat, again, even though you've done it probably 1,000 times in your whole playthrough before this. I understand why you would want to have a system, and I do like the idea of unlocking challenges to get to the next rank. But the thing is, when you don't have, let's say, a lifetime bonus of all the activities you were doing in the area, it doesn't really make that much sense. For while you were blowing up 45 ships because you unlocked piloting for one level, apparently only now you have to do another 50. The game acts as if you haven't touched a throttle or weapon system in your entire life, which makes no sense. So the idea of having those challenges on top of the leveling system, of having perks that are kind of a necessity when it comes to just playing the game to have more fun in the first place, grinds my gears. What really needs to happen is an overhaul, which of course will get more points per level up, with an addendum of being able to use the basic functions of the jetpack, the crouch sliding, and having a better stealth meter given to you at the start, so one doesn't have to fully max out stealth for it to even be viable. If you had more perks per level, people would actually care to maybe put points into outpost management or botany and so on, so that they would be able to actually do the certain things that they couldn't because it was just too costly to spend them on things they didn't actually know what they did fully. Now, of course, your crew has perks that you can send to an outpost to use those said perks, but they are not the fully maxed out ranked perks for that perk. So you're gonna have to put your points into, let's say, outpost management 3 times to then meet the level that your companion already has at the outpost, and then finally max it out with the 2 levels and see what actually is different in that system. It's just another wall that you don't want to go over when there are already so many hurdles that are smaller that you need to go over in the first place. So now that I've shown you the second slice of this cheesecake that is leveling up, here's the last piece of the cake: difficulty. Now, difficulty for me is not just changing the difficulty of the actual settings of a game. Difficulty is how easy it is to fast travel, how easy it is to go through the inventory system, how intuitive is your game design, and of course, the difficulty of what you think, which is how hard are combat or puzzles in your game when you are on normal versus changing it to very hard. So now that we know what my version of difficulty is, and what I'm going to be talking about, the difficulty of Starfield starts with its UI, which needs entire parts of it to be fully rebuilt from the ground up. Having to go through your list of inventory and scrolling all the way down to the bottom and all the way back up and all the way down to the bottom, all the way back up to find certain resources and ammo types is unacceptable. Knowing that there are several mods for several video games, not just Bethesda titles, that have fixed this issue, which makes it easier for developers of said games to just copy and paste the important kernels of good game design that I've seen in previous titles, just leaves me speechless when they don't do it. Another difficulty that has been added into Starfield is the loss of local maps. Yes, you do have what's called a ground map, but when it comes to bigger cities like Neon, New Atlantis, or Killa City, there's so little information for the cities that you really have to remember every single location, as you have no real local map where you can easily find the store names and the doors that teleport you to a new area. So if you want to find a medical reliant to get med packs from, a general store or a gunsmith, you have to first find them on your own and then try to memorize where they are, which is extremely overwhelming in the beginning of the game, making the difficulty of you wanting to continue playing harder. Another thing I want to tell you is that when you switch to your scanner on your spaceship, you can actually fast travel to the system that you're trying to go via the scanner in the game. But a lot of people that I talked to didn't realize this for a very long time, to the point that now even the people on YouTube are making shorts of it because it was so short-sighted in explaining to the player that this is a thing you can actually do. Now there's also even something more easy than just using the scanner when you just don't want to go through the system map that is very slow, where you start in the system and then have to zoom out in the universe and go back into the system and then do it over and over again. If you did not know the scanner shortcut, there's also another shortcut where if you go to your main quest missions or your side quests and you hover over that quest line and you click it and press R, it will immediately link you to the fast travel point to go there, which is even faster than going through the map systems or the scanner way of fast traveling. Now, of course, it's right there in front of you, but I was completely overwhelmed with everything in the start of the playthrough. However, there are some good things I'll say about the difficulty. If you're playing on very hard, you will actually have to use your grenades and landmines. You'll have to go into situations actually thinking on what to do. But on any other difficulty below, I would just run up to these enemies, and if there were not 6 or 7 in a group, you can just take all the bullets into your chest and unload mags into their skulls, killing them very quickly. So while the gunplay does become more fun and more rewarding as it's more challenging at a very hard difficulties, it also makes other things seem a bit too hard and difficult, like spaceship battles specifically, as if you don't have the thrusters unlocked or the fully kitted out ship to use, you can easily get outnumbered by ships by only having 3 against 1 versus 2 over 1, which might result into you being me, which is just turning down the difficulty when it is needed when you're in space combat. Another pro though is that I do like that, you know, you get more legendary bosses which drop more loot the higher the difficulty is. There is the problem though of having bullet sponge enemies launched into your game, which you have to face no matter what. I will say though, when you're playing this game, it will be a better experience, as I have not encountered enemies as bullet spongy as the super mutants in Fallout 4, but your mileage might vary on that and you might get completely messed up due to having some bad luck on your side when it comes to the bosses that you face in your playthrough. Either way, you see, when I'm talking about difficulty, even when I try to give you something good about it, I have very negative feelings when it comes to just how all over the place the game's difficulty feels. But there are 2 elephants in the room that I have not talked about. The first being the endgame content, which is a major spoiler. So before I get into that, this is the time for you to skip 2 for the second elephant in the room and to watch the rest of the video if you don't want to have major spoilers for the end of the game revealed to you. So the first elephant in the room is that you have space powers. And by the end of the game, you new game plus into not a new player, but you reincarnating into a new universe with the same types of characters at the same time as the beginning of the first playthrough. However, now that you're in the new universe, you can go to temples like the ones that you learn shouts in Elder Scrolls. on different planets than you were normally when you found it in your first playthrough, and that will level up your abilities by a ranking system of just 1 to 2 to 3, etc. And also, the dialogue and main story can be skipped to reveal a speedrunning post-game mode, where you have brand new dialogue for many characters talking about how you already know what's going to happen in the world that you're in. So for an ending, in my opinion, this is one of the best Bethesda title endings I've seen. I am tired of looking at a slideshow since Fallout 3, getting the same dumb ending where you just don't get the resolve and the epilogue you wish you could get in one of these games. So now that the fact that we actually have a full ending that keeps going on, kind of like the end of a JRPG with a fake out ending. For example, Dragon Age 11, Echoes of an Elusive Age has done this before, and I've seen it and played it, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit. This realization made me really excited about playing this game more, actually. But I played it, and by the time I beat it one more time, that it was more of a speedrunning mode compared to the 190 hours I put into it prior in my first playthrough, that it becomes more of a game about, you know, powering up and leveling up your magic abilities to get more powerful, to keep doing it over and over again, where you would only have minor differences between the reincarnation. May that be the constellation crew in different positions, maybe they're not even human, etc. You get these kind of like weird, wacky things happening that were always different and try to make you keep playing the game. But I'm at a point where I feel like I need a break from Starfield because I'm playing it so much, and I'm actually happy with the ending that I got. And I feel like I'll have to make another video about the post-game content for Starfield months later down the road, where I'm playing this recreationally versus trying to get this review out as fast as possible in terms of Angry Joe Show, which is I want to enjoy the game, and I feel like there is a good bookend for me to make this review with me enjoying the game and not rushing everything. So with that, this is why I'm stopping now when it comes to the post-game content. And my thoughts on it are very positive, but we'll have to see later down the road when I play more of this post-game content and beat it, you know, 4 or 5 more times and see how good is it for a game to now pick up and play. Because I definitely think that both game modes that there are in this game are completely different games, where the first one is your typical Bethesda RPG, and the second one is a roguelite, almost speedrun simulator type of game when it comes to Starfield. I have to say that this is a big pro for this game, and my score would have been a lot lower if this mode and this part of the game was not here. However, there is still one more huge elephant in the room that I haven't talked about, and that is modding. Modding is something that is kind of like a double-edged sword. And what I mean about that is that Bethesda titles have one of the biggest, if not one of the biggest modding communities I've ever seen for just a video game company, specifically when it comes to being backed by so many talented fans that will mold this game through modding into completely different experiences for us to play for like years and years on in the future. A big reason for me wanting a PC in the first place compared to wanting to do computer science or editing on YouTube like I am right now was watching modded Skyrim videos and wanting to have more RAM and GPU power so that I could even get more mods on my, what would be the Xbox One at the time that I was playing Skyrim on. Yet it seems that Bethesda executives might seem entitled, for they might rely on modders to fix huge issues that Starfield has, such as the UI being atrocious, the leveling system being too slow. I just hate that type of behavior if that's part of the reason. You shouldn't be an entitled brat when being an executive or a head of a team of developers because you know you can get away with it. Compared to any other Bethesda RPG title, Starfield feels like it was meant for mods as well. Like, why would you make all these huge planets with just empty areas for points of interest to randomly generate around your spaceship where you land? And you know that modders will probably build hundreds, if not thousands, of extra points of interest and places to land on different planets that might never get additional content, even with the devs, you know, making the Shattered Space expansion DLC right now as we speak. Also, when we're talking about systems like shipbuilding, which I didn't really fully cover because I think shipbuilding in general is kind of good but also bad when it comes to utility, and also having items inside of your ship disappearing, which happened to me, did leave a bad taste in my mouth. And that apparently did get patched out. But when it comes to those systems, such as the shipbuilding, as well as the outpost, that will of course be completely redone and improved by increased functionality and decoration for both places. Specifically, it would be nice if DLC or a mod made it so that we could actually build inside our ship halves with different decorations that we could save, kind of like a template. If you want to expand the outposts because you took them from Fallout 4 and want to make a better version of that, Bethesda, make a better version of that outpost system. So I just want to add some extra things that I think I didn't really fully cover, such as this game has been in development for 8 years. The last time I played a Bethesda game was Fallout 4, and I had AP World History in middle school. I have now finished college and I am 23 years old. Hopefully knowing that those Xbox leaks happened and that, you know, in quotation, Skyrim 2 potentially is a lot closer than we think it would be, and hopefully won't take another 8 years for that to come out. I have to say that compared to Fallout 4, I did enjoy Starfield a lot more. Realistically, I think it just has to do with the new systems, the IP refresh, and the new lore in its entirety. But at the end of the day, there are too many huge problems in this game that I can't give this anything higher but a 7.5 out of 10. And with that, if you like this video, please subscribe to see more. I hope you get good sleep, and now I will probably start working on the next video.